Machete?
That volumey, uncanny aesthetic
Slaughtering the Canto Bight Police Department.
rolled over by the girl bosses.
I don't know if I'm going to drop $5 on something they're going to blow up next week.
Welcome to Galactic Initiative. I'm your host, Jeff. Joining me is Grand Admiral Sean. Welcome, Sean.
Hello, my friend.
We'll talk about Ahsoka. Wondering, Sean, how are you feeling about this show? Where are you with Ahsoka?
I have concerns. Initially, setting back and talking about the Mando show and things like that, having Ahsoka Tano show up in live action was initially, it was good. It was pretty well done. I thought Rosario Dawson looks like her and bringing the character to life. I still have some issues with her styrofoam headpiece. Doesn't quite look right, but I'm chalking that up to trying to translate a cartoon character to a live action show. I'm looking at you, Grand Inquisitor from Kenobi. But anyway, the initially though I was fine with it, and then they were saying, oh, there's going to be a show, and looking forward to that. I was a huge fan of the Rebels cartoon. I was a huge fan of her character in Clone Wars, and then bringing her forward into Rebels and all that stuff, and everybody's talking about how it's going to be a continuation of the Rebels show, so season 5 of Rebels, etc. And so, initially I was cautiously optimistic. Things are going pretty well. We were still in season 2 of Mando. It was before we went through Book of Boba Fett and Kenobi. And then I started to get really scared about streaming. And then we got season 3 of Mando. And then I got really, really scared about streaming from Disney. Then we got the trailers. Yeah, so some things to like about it, definitely. The one thing I can say about the streaming shows that Disney's putting out for Star Wars, when they're showing you the scenes of space battles and ships and planets from space and things like that, they all look gorgeous. They look great. They look like Star Wars. But when we get the actual actors in the volume, in the physical space, there is some kind of uncanny valley situation going on there. And it's kind of hard to put your finger on it. Some of it has to do with their relationships to the background. Some of it has to do with their costumes and their makeup, and how we've talked about this in the past about the lived-in look of the Star Wars universe. And while they kind of do that in these shows, it's been happening less and less. They did a really great job in season 1 of Mandalorian of bringing you the lived-in feel of the Star Wars universe and grit and grime. But now it feels like clean and shiny. And again, I don't know if it's the nature of whatever special effects we're seeing or whatnot, but something is out of place there. And I'm sure some of it is me trying to square the circle of cartoon characters and real life action TV shows. We all have an idea of what Hera should look like based on the cartoon, and now we're seeing the actress that's playing her, and it doesn't look like the same character. But we have to keep reminding ourselves, yep, that's Hera. Same thing with Sabine. And then things have been revealed through some of these trailers that I find to potentially be troublesome. We're getting some talk around now how Sabine is somehow a Jedi, that she spent time training with Ahsoka. There's other Jedi, pseudo-Jedi characters, other Force wielders with lightsabers that borrow the Ahsoka line of "we're not Jedi," and could be interesting. Could also be another Inquisitor problem, right? We start getting these other Jedi that survived and Padawans. We get more and more and more people showing up who are like, oh, I used to be a Jedi, but I gave it up. I found better work. And then you've got these pseudo-evil Jedi, right? The Inquisitors, and it feels like the universe was really full of Jedi up until about 20 minutes before Episode 4 started, and now we're bringing in more people with lightsabers doing nefarious things. I don't know if they're Sith Lords. I don't know if they're Inquisitors. I don't know if they're former Jedi, fallen Jedi. We have a new category of Jedi we just made up for the show. I don't know, right? But I'm concerned about that, and I do not like the way Thrawn looks. That was highly disappointing, the reveal of him. My hope is that with a little more touch up and After Effect and maybe some more time down at the lab, they can make them look better, but I don't think so. It looks like the final product that they put in the trailers is going to be what we get. So concerns. I don't know what the story is going to be. I mean, so I guess we're looking for Ezra. I guess we're looking for Thrawn in order to look for Ezra. Maybe, I don't know. The interjecting of the title of Heir to the Empire muddies the waters. Is it going to be a retelling of the Zahn novel from a certain point of view? Like I don't know. I should be getting more excited, but I'm getting more and more worried. There was an interview with Rosario Dawson that came out a couple days ago where she's talking about how her character in this show is like Gandalf, the gray to the white transformation. And I'm like, oh no, here we go. So fingers crossed that maybe I'm just worrying too much. Maybe I'm gun shy now because of all the crap that we've gotten from Disney. But yeah, we'll see.
Once the final episode has been released, where will Star Wars be if the worst comes to pass? Feels like a great risk of Reach basing a series on a character from an animated film, The Clone Wars first, and she's a big part of the Clone Wars TV series, and then she moves into Rebels and so on. But I'm not convinced that normies know Ahsoka or care about Ahsoka. So if this doesn't end well, what's next for Star Wars?
Well, that is going to be the question. There's a bunch of factors that come into play that don't necessarily have anything to do with the show. We are in the middle of, right now, this work stoppage in Hollywood because the writers and the actors are all on strike. There's nothing new being made. There's nothing to follow up, except, if we're lucky, a completed season 2 of Andor. It's best case scenario, and then they pull it off, and it's a fantastic show, and we're all clamoring for season 2. It's not going to happen. The Hollywood process of making TV and movies takes a very long time. You have to start by writing something. Well, if all the writers are on strike, even if everybody loves this show and says, give me season 2 now, stat, I ordered 20 more episodes. Too bad. Worst case scenario, right? If everybody hates it and it's garbage, and the internet is afire with Kathleen Kennedy and, Lucasfilm and all that kind of stuff, well, what's going to happen next is perhaps a solo level backlash on Andor. Punish the thing that comes next. And not that Andor is already slated for a huge turnout when it comes to viewership, if we look at the viewership of the previous Andor show. But the hardcore fans loved it, and that's going to be pretty much the end of it at that point. So if Ahsoka's very, very bad, it's another Kenobi or another Book of Boba Fett, we're looking at, it doesn't matter if there's a work stoppage, nobody wants any more Star Wars anyway, and it could really be the end of Star Wars streaming. It will be the end of Dave Filoni, and it will be the end of this passion project of his to take all these TV shows, tie them together, and then culminate in some kind of cinematic Filoni-verse event. So it's bad news, even if there's good news. If Disney continues in its financial troubles, they may be forced to sell off a bunch of their assets, maybe even Lucasfilm. I mean, we know what would happen if George bought it. And of course, this is the fantasy of all the fanboys. There would be a lot of goodwill on the part of the fans, or they would come back to the franchise simply because it's back in the hands of George Lucas. But the normies, you asked this question about the normies. I think the normies know Ahsoka Tano. We all grew together with Ahsoka. Like, this can be fine because they're happy they're getting more Ahsoka. My hope is that this show isn't one of these devices where they are trying to appeal to a group of people who've never seen Star Wars, don't necessarily like Star Wars, or don't have an interest in becoming hardcore fans. But the company, in an attempt to expand its fan base, ergo its revenue, loses the people who've been supporting the thing all the way along.
There's always the hope that it'll be great. Looking at the teasers, I see more of the volume. I see an uncanny aesthetic. The actors do not blend into their surroundings. very clear and obvious. It's Attack of the Clones level special effects. This was not the case for The Mandalorian when the volume first came to be. And so the challenges of using this technology, using it well, and tricking the eye, creating believable backdrops, it's something that Disney's forgotten. And I'm wondering, why are things getting worse? For lack of a better term, why does everything that Disney's turned out since Mando 1 have that volumey, unreal look to it?
Well, yeah, it's hard to really come up with an answer for that, because technology should be progressing, not regressing. Now, of course, the application of technology, right, there's the other half of that. Technology is a tool, and the tool in the hand of a craftsperson can create great things. The tool in the hand of something less than a great craftsperson creates whatever, right? Obviously, it's 4 years after Mando, but it doesn't look as good as Mando season 1. And I think a lot of it has to do with the use of actual physical sets. So one of the things that they did with the volume that was great in season 1 of Mando was it wasn't the primary special effect. It was a background piece. It was a way like, okay, we're going to build all this stuff around you, and then we'll just use this sort of in the background to sort of round out the edges or provide depth. It wasn't the special. It wasn't the set. It was part of the set or behind the set. Like where it really came in amazing was when they were doing cockpit shots of the Razor Crest. It looks like you're in space. That was great. When they were sitting in Slave One, they built the interior of Slave One, and then they used the volume to make stuff around it move and look like you were moving inside the ship. Very well done. But when you substitute anything, any kind of practical prop effect, and you just go with the broadcast or the transmitted image, it looks like you're standing in front of a TV. And now you're getting the reflection of the light from that on people, as well as whatever lighting you're having on set, and it starts to get weird. But the other thing that just really stands out to me is that everybody is, this sounds weird, but work with me on this. Everybody looks really clean. It feels very much like a bunch of people in costumes standing in front of a TV screen acting. And we see Obi-Wan Kenobi in his hut, and his robe has holes in it that he's sewed together. Right? There's dirt everywhere. Right? When Luke picks up the helmet on the Millennium Falcon to do his lightsaber training, it's scuffed. It's dirty. The graphics are chipped on it. It's faded. It's probably military surplus or something, right? It feels real. Everybody says, "Oh, lived-in universe," but that's a thing. It feels like everything belongs there, and that everything is interacting, right? And so the over-reliance on the technology will always be a problem. If you look at something like Peter Jackson's Hobbit trilogy versus his Lord of the Rings trilogy, those are analogous, right? The sequel trilogy the prequel trilogy versus the original trilogy, same thing. More practical on one end, more special effects on the other one, or more CGI. The more you rely on that technology, the more awkward the actual live actors look in that environment. You're never going to fully get it matched up. You're never going to get the angles right. The volume is a great idea. All things in moderation, and I don't think that they're laying off the volume at all in these shows. I have other guesses as to why these shows are looking terrible or more terrible as we go on. There is a lot of conversation going on right now about the finances of Lucasfilm, and then as Disney as a whole. There are questions being asked about where some of the money went. It's gone missing. It's not being accounted for. And these are independent stories, right? Nobody's saying, "Oh, well, it was Professor Plum in the library with the candlestick or whatever." But people are starting to ask these questions, and I'm wondering, are the budgets that are being reported for these shows, is that money actually being spent on the show? Or is that money going to other places in the company to cover loss? Okay. And so are we seeing the visual results of an accounting trick? But here's a salty or less salty proposition for you, maybe benefit of the doubting here a little bit. Maybe the reason why this show looks the way it does is maybe they are trying to achieve in live action an aesthetic that is reminiscent of the cartoon. So instead of trying to step 100% away from a cartoon look and being full gritty real world Star Wars, maybe they are trying to make it more like the cartoon. And again, this is me giving a whole lot of people a benefit of the doubt and attributing positive intent to a lot of bad work. But
artistic license.
Again, this is me hoping for the best, but I'm still preparing for the worst.
Yeah, it's watching many of the scenes lack depth, and they lack extras moving about. It's 2 to 3 characters, usually 2, just standing within 10 feet of one another. Everything just feels hollow and empty and computer generated. But
the most people we see in any scene is when the 2 bad Jedi people are slaughtering the Canto Bight Police Department. Sorry, the New Republic security forces. Sorry, my bad. But yes. Yeah, there's like 5 people in that scene. I'm thinking, oh my god, they blew their budget. They had to have catering. So maybe that's where all the money goes, right?
Indeed.
But yeah, no, that is something I've noticed about a lot of these streaming shows is that it feels like, and there's a few exceptions, but it feels like, yeah, you're right. Most of these scenes are 2 people, 3 people. There's no scenes. There's no crowd scenes. And even in some of the fight scenes where we see Ahsoka, she's chopping up CGI robots. So,
and we talked before we started our recording. We talked about the Ghost, a HasLab project. It's already funded. The tiers, the figures, the dimensions of the product. Let's just revisit that. What are your thoughts on the Ghost from HasLab?
I will say that it is beautiful. It's very well done. The rendering is fantastic. It's going to be massive, right? It's 28 by 34 by 13. It's going to be bigger than the Legacy Falcon. And you look at all the detail, and you look at, it has all the stuff right out of the show. The figures, which of course we haven't actually seen figures. These are digital renders, but the figures that are at each tier look great. And they come with some really cool accessories, and the card backs for them. They're going to be vintage collection style, 3 3/4, right, with the 6x9 card back. And it's going to have the Rebels logo, and the card art for the figures is from the mural from the show. So at the end of season 4, there's the big mural that has everybody. Kanan and Ezra and, all the people, Hera and everybody, and then the 2 big Loth Wolf things. They've taken that artwork and they've made individual card backs for it, but they don't have everybody, which my first critique of this particular HasLab project is the tier. So to initially back it, we only needed 8,000 people, and we are currently at 9,500-ish at the recording of the show. And the first tier to get to 1 3 3/4 figure is like 11,000 backers. And then the next one after that is 14,000. And then the last one is 17,000. So the incentive tiers to encourage people is 3 3 3/4 figures. So the ship itself comes with Hera, right? So that's part of the initial backing. So you get the ship and Hera on one of these card backs, and then first tier incentive is Ezra, second tier incentive is Kanan, and third is Zeb. Okay, so we have no Sabine, no Chopper, no Ahsoka. Maybe Ahsoka is a stretch, but we have no. The entire Ghost crew is not represented. Now there is a The head of Chopper appears on Phantom 2. They say you can take it off or whatever. I don't know why you'd want to, but you can take it off. Great. But you don't get the full crew. And these stretch goals are big stretches. It's a $500 product. It's $499.99 plus shipping and handling, tax, shipping and handling. You're saying you were expecting approximately 3,000 people to invest $500 each beyond the initial funding to get to a figure. So you're going from 8,000 to 17,000. So you need to more than double your backing to get to the third tier. It seems like a lot. It seems like a stretch. Now, it's coming out, of course, in conjunction with the Ahsoka show, but the Ahsoka show is its own show. Yes, this ship will be in it, but the packaging and the marketing for this HasLab project is for the Rebels show, right? They're using the Rebels word mark on the action figures and on the packaging, so it is geared towards that. So that's kind of at cross purposes in a way. You're not getting Ahsoka theme stuff for the Ahsoka show with the ship. You're getting Rebels theme stuff with it, which is a show that's no longer on air, and so it feels kind of off that way. All the toy collector people I've talked to who are still hardcore into the vintage collection and all that stuff, they're all backing it. They're all into it. It does feel like the timing is good. The ship is going to be in the show, so the timing is good. The only other time you would have had similar built-in or baked-in purchasers would have been during the Rebels cartoon when it was still airing. We have talked about in the past the problem with, for example, the Rancor. When they tried to do the Black Series Rancor, they launched that project and ended that project a couple of weeks before the Book of Boba Fett show. And none of the marketing and none of the tiers associated with that toy had anything to do with the Book of Boba Fett. Say what you want about the Book of Boba Fett, but it would have been better, and it would have been more. And that product didn't fund, right? Nobody bought the Rancor, but you would have had a better shot of funding it is if you had released it after, or you had started that campaign after the episodes where the Rancor shows up, especially at the end when Boba's riding the Rancor and wrecking shop. You would have had a better shot of funding it that way, because now you can cross promote it. You can say, oh yeah, we're making a Black Series Rancor, and maybe instead of just coming with the Return of the Jedi Rancor Keeper, you can make a Robert Trujillo figure, right, from Book of Boba Fett. And then now the playability of that toy, or the displayability or whatever of it, is if I want to set it up with my Return of the Jedi figures, I can, or if I want to set it up with my Book of Boba Fett figures, I can. But they dropped this Rancor, and everybody's like, why are they doing the Rancor? It's not the 40th anniversary yet for Return of the Jedi. It seems like a really big thing. And then, of course, we've kicked to death the whole way that they rolled it out, and the marketing on it was terrible. But it just felt weird. It was just sort of out there in the ether. And if they had waited just a few weeks, it would have made way more sense, and they probably would have had a lot more buy-in. So I get why they're doing the Ghost now. It's going to be in the show. It's kind of a tie-in or whatever. But of course, we're all now thinking about the Razor Crest situation, right? So when the Razor Crest came out as a Black Series, or as a vintage collection HasLab, it was in the middle of Book of Boba, or Mandalorian show season 2, and everybody's all like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing ever, and they all backed it. And the day after the campaign closed, or like 2 days after the campaign closed, they blew the ship up in the show. Is something similar going to happen about this? And so I don't know if that's creating some of the slow burn on this. It did fund the initial fund at 8,000 in the first 24 hours or 48 hours, but it's been a creep ever since. It's been the thing's been up for several weeks now, and they've only gotten another 1,000 backers, and they're asking for 7,500 more to hit the final tier. So again, almost double at this point. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And there's a lot of people who are holding back on their dollars.
Are there any aspects of Ahsoka we haven't discussed? Anything else about the series?
Two things. I and I think I might kind of speak for you a little bit on this. I'm really worried about what they're going to do with Thrawn. I'm holding my breath, fingers are crossed. Are they going to do him justice? Is he going to be played out as an easy mark, or something for the girl bosses of the show? I don't know. He's such he can be a great villain, and for a long time. We'll see what happens there. The other thing about toys, something else that we have been talking about off mic, the way toy rollouts have been seems to be very strange. We were talking about how these shows we get initially, when the show first comes out, we get 4 or 5 figures, or we get a small vehicle, something like that, and there's some plushies and a couple of YA novels, and then nothing, no second wave. And even when you have a show like Mando that went into 3 full seasons, there's tons of stuff that was never made. We were discussing how Andor is going to be coming into a second season, and we still haven't even gotten the full main cast from the first season. And then you were telling me about how now they have a Book of Boba Fett 2-pack of figures that's just hitting Target stores. So my concern about this show is, are we going to get up front new stuff, or are we going to get repaints? Because we've already had quite a few Ahsoka figures released, Grand Admiral Thrawn released, all of the Rebels characters released, maybe the bad Jedi guys, I don't know, a figure of the New Republic security services. We still haven't got one of those from the Mando show. I don't know. But again, it feels like there's a very strange, almost arbitrary way in which the first wave of toys for these new shows is selected, and then the follow-up is either there is none, or it's way after the fact. So even if you were happy about Book of Boba Fett, there was nothing for you to buy. So my concern about this show is it's going to follow that same pattern. I mean, because there could be some really great opportunities again for marketing and toys and tie-ins and whatnot, but the Disney Hasbro machine keeps doing the same thing over and over again. So I have low expectations and little hope of anything good or exciting coming out on the toy front for this show either.
Well, let's circle back to Thrawn for a moment. What is your fear that he's not really a villain? He has these other motivations and they've caused him to come in conflict with the good guys, but he's really not a bad guy after all. Or that he'll get rolled over by the girl bosses. He won't be the Zahn series clever tactician. What do you think will happen to Thrawn?
So let me start with this. Let me start with, and I apologize to hardcore fans who are familiar with Thrawn and his origin story and all that kind of stuff. There is an element of the conflicted villain, in the sense that if we go back and we look at what his story is, he came to and joined the Empire to form an alliance with the Empire in order to protect his people from another more menacing threat, this other evil alien presence, the Yuzan Vong, right? And so he shows up and proves his worth to the Empire and crushes the Empire's enemies quite ruthlessly. Flash forward to the second round of Timothy Zahn books. It's all the same, except it's a little more conflicted. I'm really doing it for my people. I don't care about the Empire. They're trying to rehabilitate him slightly in the new novels, the new Timothy Zahn novels, but still not completely, right? He's still a bad guy. He still knows who's signing his paycheck, and he's still doing things for the Emperor. But he is portrayed as sort of this bemused outsider. He's like, well, we're all soldiers here, right? Why aren't we soldiering? Why are we politicking? Leave the politics to the politicians. Let's go fight our wars. All that stuff will sort itself on the back end, right? And of course, his big thing is He understands his enemies by studying their art, because he believes that if you understand the totality of a people, then you will be able to predict their behavior. And if you can predict their behavior, you can predict their military strategy. And then you'll ultimately be victorious. And that's kind of where he gets his reputation of kind of being unbeatable or being a master tactician. So that's Thrawn. Now, my concern is that they abandon all of that, and we get a completely different character. And he's going to have the name, but he's not going to be Thrawn, right? He's going to wind up being another one of these slapstick Keystone Cop Imperials who's overconfident and incompetent at the same time. This show, some of the marketing around it is what's really started to frighten me, is where they say, well, you don't have to watch the old Star Wars to watch Ahsoka. You don't have to watch Clone Wars. You don't have to watch Rebels. You don't have to, you don't even, all you got to do is watch that one episode in Mandalorian and you'll be great. You'll be fine. And I that puts me on edge, because it means you're going to do something, or it could mean, okay, I have to use my lawyer words. You could be doing something with this character that doesn't fit this character, but you don't want people to notice it, acknowledge it, or call it out, because you don't want them going back to the material that came before. If we don't get the 100% Thrawn that I'm used to, that's not the best, but it's not the worst. If we get a prop for this girl power agenda thing, then that's just going to suck big time.
Okay, help me to complete the following sentence. If Sabine is force sensitive, I will be blank.
Strong enough to pull the ears off a Gundark? I don't know.
Sabine addresses Ahsoka as master, and we see in the trailer, we see Sabine wielding a lightsaber. So that's where the complete the sentence activity comes from.
Yeah, what the actual F comes to mind? Disappointed. Why has everybody got to be a Jedi? It used to be a special characteristic. It used to be something that a very small percentage of the galaxy had, and
well, not exactly. The survivors of Order 66 multiply by the day.
Well, that's the problem, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine weren't very effective at destroying the Jedi Order.
Right. So every 20 minutes we get a new Jedi. I mean, at this rate, Luke didn't have to confront Vader. All he had to do was just sit around for a couple of years. We would have about 50 Jedi, and then they could have done a full assault and ended it in an afternoon.
Well, that brings us right back to where we are with Ahsoka.
Right.
I'm not sure the show will explain Ahsoka's absence. Ahsoka and Luke could have found one another through the Force, banded together, and taken down the Empire. But we're playing games. Yoda and Obi-Wan survived, and Luke and Leia, they were down to their last hope. There was no one left. But we're altering what Lucas shared with us in the original trilogy, and it doesn't sit well with me at all.
I would concur with that. The finding, like you say, finding the new Jedi, and why didn't they come back and help Luke? Disney keeps throwing stuff in our face, like the whole Underground Railroad for Jedi in the Obi-Wan show. They're connected through a network. And so that would imply now that they know about each other's existence, right? So now as a Jedi, I'm going to be like, sweet, we're going to get the band back together, right? We're going to get the remnants of the Order together somewhere, and we're going to come up with a plan, and we're going to get Vader. But instead, what you're telling me is they don't want to have a hand in that. They don't want to participate in that, and they would just rather go live quietly in some corner of the galaxy and farm something. Well, that's dumb. That's sequel talk. No. It diminishes Luke Skywalker. All right, we've already had our talk about that. I've already cried about Luke once on this damn show, and I'm not going to do it again. But my point is, right, you diminish Luke Skywalker. You diminish the whole scenario on Death Star 2 with the redemption of Vader. You diminish all that stuff.
Yes.
don't get me wrong. I loved Rebels. Right? I loved that show. It was great. Maybe the first season was kind of half of it was a little rough. It was a little teenager crybaby crap. But again, we had Kanan, who was a Padawan who survived the purge and all that stuff, and he was a character who was dealing with the isolation, the fear, the terror, the thought that he was the only one left. It's a good story, but it's still problematic that he's there to help. And so this show is coming along. It's muddying the waters. It's throwing stuff in there that we don't need. That creates more confusion, more plot holes, more continuity gaps, more contradictory events to the timeline. We'll see. I mean, we'll see where it goes.
Yes, we will. And soon. August 23rd, just around the corner. All right, well, we've covered a lot of ground with Ahsoka. We might record the week of the premiere, give our review, give our thoughts. We'll close this show. Thank you, Sean.
I'm rethinking the Italian situation.
As you should.
There's a story in there, friends, and someday we'll tell you.
Will we? Yes.
We owe it to fans of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Absolutely. And viewers, thank you for watching. Check out Galactic Initiative for all things Star Wars.
Galactic Initiative is not authorized or endorsed by Lucasfilm Limited. The name Star Wars and all related materials are registered trademarks of Lucasfilm Limited, a subsidiary of the Walt Disney Company, all rights reserved. Galactic Initiative is a registered trademark, and other product and company names are trademarks of their respective holders. Use does not imply affiliation or endorsement.